Hi guys. It's been a while since my first starter deck video, and I think we finally have enough products to do another roundup. This time I'll be covering starter decks 14 through 19. If you're a prospective player doing research, go download and play through the tutorial app to learn the rules and then come back here. It only takes about 20 minutes and will provide necessary context for the rest of the video. Link for both the iOS and Android versions are in the description. I won't be going in release order, by the way. I think it makes more sense to talk about both pairs of regular starters first, then move on to the advanced decks since they're technically a different class of product. For those who've watched my older starter deck videos, I've changed up the format this time around. The grading system is gone, and I'm instead opting to present the information in a less rigid manner. I'm hoping this will give a more complete picture while also allowing the video to age a bit more gracefully. Here's a quick rundown on how each review will be organized. I'll start with an intro where I explain the playstyle and general game plan of each deck. I'll also mention any bonus cards that come in the box. I'll then discuss how effective each product is as a learning tool. To qualify as a good learning tool, a deck has to be simple enough for new players to pilot with relative ease and should cover a wide variety of game mechanics. Bonus points for including a basic engine or combo, as this will prepare players for constructed play. After that, I'll explain how to upgrade each deck. I'll discuss which cards from the starter deck can be carried over and some key cards to add. I'll also point out any cards that are particularly expensive just as a heads up. If the archetype has support coming in the future, I'll mention that too, but I learned my lesson last time and won't be making any claims about power level. Finally, I'll summarize my thoughts and give my final verdict. To be clear, I won't be including deck lists in this video. There are plenty of places where you can find those. I think it's much more valuable to try building a deck yourself before checking online sources. And just to get it out of the way, all upgraded decks in this video exist in the same general power bracket. I think they're fine to take to locals, meaning they're fairly strong but will likely struggle to achieve a decent win percentage against top meta decks. Of course, you can take any deck to any event, but I think the game is most fun when both players have a roughly equal chance to win. Last thing before we start, I have to mention that it's best practice to buy 2 copies of each starter deck in Digimon. This is because the main line of the deck, i.e. the Digimon on the box plus its evolutions, are only included at 2 copies each instead of the full 4. Mainline cards are critical to each deck's game plan, and having inconsistent access to them can make games feel very clunky. As such, all reviews in this video are based on my experience playing with 2 copies of each deck, with the exception of ST15 and 16, which I feel are not reliant on their main lines and thus work just fine with 1 copy. Alright, that's enough background info, let's get on with it already. Our first pair is ST15 and 16, which feature the Black War Greymon and Purple Metal Garurumon lines respectively. ST15 focuses heavily on defense, combining blocker and reboot as well as effects that trigger when an attack is redirected. It wants to establish big blockers to wall the opponent out of the game while slowly whittling them down. ST16 is an aggressive deck with efficient removal. It can flood the board by playing small bodies from the trash and punish greedy plays with retaliation. It wants to come out of the gate fast, keeping up the pressure until the opponent folds. Unfortunately, there are no bonus cards included with these decks. As the decks featured in the tutorial app, it should be no surprise that these two are exceptional when it comes to teaching the game to new players. They're simple to use, cover a lot of common mechanics, and crucially include ace cards, something I consider mandatory knowledge. They are a bit on the simple side though. Neither deck really has a cohesive engine and the combos are very basic, so I don't think they reflect the modern state of the game. In regards to upgrading, I'm going to be blunt here, there is no upgrading. ST15 has no carryover whatsoever, while ST16 keeps a paltry 2 cards, neither of which are played at 4 copies. That's not upgrading, that's buying singles with extra steps. I'm not saying you can't build War Greymon or Metal Garurumon, but I am saying that these starter decks aren't going to help with that. All is not lost though. New cards featuring these Digimon are coming in BT21, as well as starter decks 20 and 21. I'm hesitant to call it support since it's hinted that it may be geared at least partially towards DNA Omni, but we won't know for sure until more info is released. So what's the verdict here? Honestly, there's pretty much no reason to buy these. They're great learning tools, but that's really their only use. Without bonus cards or a way to upgrade, there's no incentive to engage with these products outside of the tutorial app. Moving on, let's talk about the Liberator decks ST18 and 19, featuring the Zephagamon and Sendromon lines respectively. ST18 is a pretty balanced deck that specializes in removal via combat. It combines suspension effects, vortex, and piercing to deal damage while keeping the board clear. Zephagamon can become immune to Digimon effects every turn with careful play, keeping momentum and forcing the opponent to fight an uphill battle. ST19 is an aggressive deck that pressures the opponent from multiple angles. Sendromon acts as the main threat, while tokens and small bodies offer additional offense and support. Effects that reduce the DP of security Digimon help the small attackers stay alive, after which they can be sacrificed to make extra attacks with Overclock, or to keep the stack alive with Shipparamon's Inherit. This pincer strategy puts the opponent on the back foot trying to deal with 2 threats at once. I think these decks land somewhere in the above average range as learning tools. Most of the mechanics are simple, and some basic combos are present, which I think is great. However, I can't help but feel that the headlining keywords, Vortex and Overclock, are likely to trip up new players. This is because they require knowledge that's not clarified on the card, such as the fact that an attack made with Vortex still has to target a suspended Digimon, and that you can attack with Overclock even if you're already suspended. Additionally, these decks don't contain ace cards. This isn't a deal breaker since they're present in the tutorial app, but obviously I'd prefer if they were included so players can get comfortable both using and playing around them. If you want to learn more about Vortex, Overclock, or any of the other keywords in the game, you can check out my video where I explain them all, link in description. For bonus cards, each deck comes with a set of training promos, one of each color. I really can't understate what a big deal this is. Trainings are currently the best staples in the game, showing up in virtually every deck. Reprinting them also reduced their price considerably, making them more accessible for all players. Moving on, I have some great news. These decks are actually upgradable. I'm going to talk about these as a pair because the upgrade process is basically the same for both. You'll want to carry over all the cards with the Liberator trait, so the main line plus the Tamers, and maybe the option cards too if you don't have anything else on hand. Trainings and boosts come too. Upgrading is simple but also budget dependent. The standard upgrade path involves adding in the EX7 lines, filling in any remaining gaps with cards from the starter or generic green or yellow cards. EX7 Zafaga and especially Central can be a little pricey, but neither are commonly run at 4 copies, so that helps a bit. The premium upgrade path adds in the promos as well, though they're very expensive and in my opinion don't offer enough of a power boost to justify their price. In the future, I have no doubt that these archetypes will see fairly regular support, at least in the short term, considering they have protagonist privilege. There's only one card confirmed right now, but it's only a matter of time until more are revealed. All in all, I think these are great products. The learning experience is solid, and I'm hopeful that regular support will mean continuous upgrade opportunities. Of course, the trainings are a huge bonus too, bolstering an already strong feature set. Let's now move on to the advanced decks. Advanced decks are a higher tier of pre-constructed product, costing more than normal starters, but with a much higher power level. They also come with sleeves, which I think is a great perk as it lets new players start playing immediately with no extra costs. The first of the 2 advanced decks is ST14 featuring Beelzemon. Beelzemon is an explosive combo deck, infamous for gaining memory out of nowhere by trashing cards from the top of the deck. It wants to get 20 cards in the trash ASAP to set up for its big combo which deals high damage, or in the case of the upgraded deck, can be straight up lethal. Learning is definitely the weak point of this deck. Coverage of the basics is adequate, but not great. The main pain point is the combo-centric game plan, meaning players who don't grasp the correct setup and procedure will basically be playing without a win condition. The execution isn't hard once you know what to do, there's just more moving pieces than I would like to see. The involvement of the trash doesn't help either since the rulings surrounding it can be unintuitive. If you want to learn more about the combo and some of the finer rulings regarding the trash, you can watch my video explaining it all, link in description. Bonus cards are largely unremarkable, with X-Antibody being the only one worth more than $1. When upgrading, so much of the starter is carried over that it would be easier to list the cards that aren't. Unsurprisingly, it's all of the out-of-archetype pieces: Candlemon, Phascomon, Porcupamon, Skullsatamon, and Beelstar. Everything else gets to stay. Upgrading Beelzemon is super easy. Grab the Beelzemon X line from BT12, a few copies of EX6 Beelzemon, some trainings, and you're good to go. More support is coming in BT19, specifically Special Booster 2.5. The new stuff seems to be aimed at improving consistency and addressing weaknesses, which I think is very welcome. I think my position on this deck is pretty clear. Not great for new players, but workable if you're willing to do some research. On the plus side, the upgrade cost is very low, and personally I think it's a super fun deck to play. Okay, last up is ST17, aka the Double Typhoon Advanced deck, aka Bunnies. This is a weird one, as it's basically a Terriermon deck with part of a Lotmon deck stapled to it. For this review, I'll be focusing on the Terriermon cards because the Lotmon half is comparatively underdeveloped, and even the biggest nerds can't agree on how it should be built. Terriermon is an aggro deck with strong late-game control. It can play out low-level bodies easily, using them to attack or to evolve into Rapidmons, which are hard to get rid of. With a Rapidmon on the board, it threatens Mega Gargomon Ace, which can effectively skip the opponent's next turn with its brutal lockdown. The bonus cards are roughly on par with what we got with Beelzemon. Nothing super exciting except for a copy of BT8 Rapidmon, which can be put into the deck immediately. The learning experience with this deck is very strong and may even eclipse that of ST15 and 16. There's a nice variety of mechanics, and the game plan is very straightforward. There are opportunities for combos, but they're neither mandatory nor complex. There's also a strong emphasis on ace cards, which I think is great for practicing with the mechanic. This one gets full marks across the board. Like Beelzemon, a majority of cards carry over in some capacity. You can ditch Gargomon, Biomerge Henry, and the Lotmon line, except for maybe a copy or two of Lotmon itself. Everything else can stick around. Upgrading is actually fairly minimal, though budget is once again a big factor. The full power version uses Rapidmon X, a very strong but very expensive card, while the budget version maintains Mega Gargomon Ace as the main boss monster. Everything else stays pretty much the same between the two versions. First, add in some more Terriermons. Popular choices include Terriermon X, Floodgate Terriermon, and BT8 Terriermon. Feel free to run more than 12 rookies, you'll be playing them constantly, so you'll want a few extras. Add 2 more BT8 Rapidmon and some agility trainings, and that's pretty much it as far as required cards go. To be clear, there are no level 5s to add because both boss monsters can also digivolve over level 4 Rapidmon, so level 5 Rapidmon alone is sufficient. If you want some additional top end, Cherubimon Ace fits, but is almost as expensive as Rapidmon X. Terriermon will see more support in Special Booster 2.5, getting a few new tricks including Rapidmon Ace, one of the first Ace cards to have an inherited ability. I think this product is great for new players as it's super easy to pick up and play. Unfortunately, it falters in other aspects, being very expensive to fully upgrade and having unimpressive bonus cards. And that's everything covered. Here's a quick recap. ST15 and 16 are very well designed and great for learning the game, but utterly fail in every other category. I would strongly advise against buying these. ST18 and 19 are strong products with incredible value. Unfortunately, the high cost of promos makes them very expensive to max out, but the budget versions still have a respectable power level. ST14 is in a weird spot of not being beginner friendly, but also being by far the cheapest deck to max out. If you're willing to put in some extra work learning combos and rules, give it a try. ST17, as I just said, has the best learning experience, but I can't help but feel it's held back by huge upgrade costs. Well, that's all I have for you. I hope you learned something. Please leave any questions in the comments and I'll be happy to answer them. I tried to be more focused and less wordy than I usually am in this video. Let me know if you like the change or prefer the tangents and more specific explanations. Thanks again for your continued support, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!